Welcome to July, and welcome to my channel. But for you, welcome back. So, let me ask you something. Why is it that the moment you finally get exactly what you have been asking for in a relationship, the safe partner, the consistent texts, the love without an active, burning emergency, your very first instinct is to burn it to the ground? Have you ever actually stopped to notice this? You spend 5 or 10 years complaining about the rain, but the second someone actually hands you an umbrella, you look at it like it is a weapon. You survive the partners who treat you like an option on a menu. You get out of the dynamics that feel like a running tally of emotional debts. And then, one day, you actually make it out. You find yourself standing in a room with a person who doesn't yell, who doesn't keep score, and who is absolutely never going to pull the rug out from under you. And instead of taking a deep breath and feeling relief, you feel completely terrified. Because the silence doesn't sound like peace, does it? It sounds like a setup. And the person standing in front of you holding a glass of water suddenly looks a lot more dangerous than the person who used to hand you matches. This is what I want to talk with you about today. Because we talk endlessly about what it takes to survive a deeply damaging relationship, but we almost never talk about the absolute whiplash of arriving in a healthy one, and how incredibly hard it is to stop acting like you are still being hunted when the room is completely safe. Think about how this actually plays out when you finally land with someone who is just good. Think about the weight that comes with being with someone who actually answers their phone. It is a pressure nobody warns you about. When you have spent a decade dealing with people who were entirely unpredictable, people who made you guess where you stood every single morning, people who required you to earn their basic attention by fixing their problems, finally standing next to someone who is just solid feels completely alien. It feels temporary, like you are simply sitting in the waiting room for the inevitable collapse. But what happens when the collapse doesn't come? When the person sitting across from you just keeps being kind and reliable and boringly consistent day after day. You start to feel something strange, something that looks an awful lot like boredom. But is it actually boredom with them? No. It is boredom with the absence of a crisis. You look at your partner, and instead of overwhelming gratitude, you feel a weird, restless itch, a pull toward the chaos of a person who almost broke you 3 years ago. Not because you actually want to go back to crying in your car at 2 a.m. You don't. But because your body hasn't stopped reaching for the fire. And that is the hardest thing to admit out loud to a friend, isn't it? You sit there thinking, I have the perfect person right in front of me. So why am I staring at the ceiling, wondering what my disaster of an ex is doing right now? Because the body remembers exactly what it was trained to do. If you were trained to believe that love is something you have to panic over, then a love that does not induce panic does not register as love at all. It just registers as an empty hour in the schedule, a blank space where the adrenaline is supposed to be. And that brings us to the actual threat of gentleness. Have you ever paid attention to what happens in your chest when your partner is genuinely gentle with you after a long history of being treated sharply? It usually isn't a warm, fuzzy feeling. It is a massive spike in your heart rate. Because a system that has been taught to recognize attention as something that always comes with a price tag does not know how to process a gift with no strings attached. When someone speaks softly to you or anticipates what you need without making a big deal out of it, your brain doesn't say, "Oh good, we are safe." Your brain says, "What does this person want from me? And when are they going to collect the debt?" You become jumpy. You become highly defensive precisely because there is absolutely nothing to defend against. The lack of a visible threat becomes the greatest threat of all, because you are absolutely certain the blow is coming, and not being able to see where it will come from makes it 10 times worse. So what do? We start trying to provoke it. Think about the last time you picked a fight over the dishes, or the time you got cold and distant for 3 days just to see if the other person would finally snap and abandon you. You push the boundary, and then you push it again, just to see if the structure holds, because you would rather force the explosion this afternoon when you are fully prepared for it, then wait for it to happen randomly on a Friday night when your guard is down. We are actively trying to manufacture the emergency so that our bodies can finally do what they know how to do. You want them to yell at you. You want them to slam a door, because if they slam a door, then the script finally makes sense again. But here is where the healthy relationship completely short-circuits your brain. Because you pick the fight. You throw the bait out there. You brace yourself for the screaming match that your last partner would have absolutely engaged in. And instead of screaming, this new person just looks at you, takes a breath, and asks, "Why are you so upset right now? What do you actually need from me?" And it makes you furious, doesn't it? It makes you angrier than if they had just yelled back, because you don't have a script for de-escalation. You have a PhD in surviving a screaming match, but you have absolutely zero training in how to stand in a room and just be vulnerable. When they refuse to fight you, they strip away your protection. They force you to look at the fact that you are the one holding the knife. And that is a terrifying mirror to look into. And this is exactly where the relationship advice industry steps in to offer you a fix. And the fix is almost entirely insulting. We live in a culture that loves to look at a deeply embedded trauma response and slap a pastel-colored label on it. They tell you that you just have an avoidant attachment style. They tell you to buy a workbook. They suggest that curing a decade of being emotionally crushed is just a matter of using "I feel" statements and figuring out if your love language is physical touch or acts of service. It is a complete joke. You cannot out-worksheet a nervous system that thinks it is locked in a cage. You cannot cure the physical panic of someone being nice to you by repeating a positive affirmation in the rearview mirror. When you are addicted to the cortisol of a toxic dynamic, telling someone to just relax and accept the love is like telling someone in a freezing room to just imagine they are wearing a sweater. It doesn't physically change the temperature of the air. It just makes you feel like you are failing at being happy. So what actually happens when we try to force ourselves to be happy in the quiet? We end up dragging the absolute worst parts of the bad relationship directly into the bed with the good one. There is a very strange internal guilt we think we owe to our own suffering. When you have spent years being the person who handles the chaos, the one who is defined by their grit, the one who keeps trying to fix the unfixable partner, suddenly being okay feels like a massive betrayal of that identity. You look at your current relationship, the stability, the simple predictability of watching a movie on a Sunday without wondering if it's going to turn into a breakup. And a part of you feels like an absolute fraud. You feel like you have abandoned the person who stayed awake every night trying to figure out how to be good enough for the ex who never cared. That past version of you worked so hard to keep you alive. They took the hits. They carried the weight. And now that you are sitting on a comfortable sofa drinking coffee, it feels like you left them behind in the burning building. We hold on to the anxiety because it feels like the only way to honor what we went through. If we let it go, if we just enjoy the coffee and the nice partner, then maybe the pain didn't mean anything. Maybe it was just pain. And that is a terrifying thought. So we stay loyal to the scar. We poke at the old wounds. We stalk the ex's social media just to make sure it still hurts. Because if it stops hurting, we might not know who we are anymore. Let's look at the hardest realization of all. What happens when you look at how you are acting with this new, kind person, and you realize you are doing exactly what was done to you? Have you had that moment yet? You spend years being the victim of someone who was unpredictable, someone who gave you the silent treatment when they were mad, someone who constantly tested your loyalty, someone who made you walk on eggshells. And now, you are sitting there with a partner who has done absolutely nothing wrong. And what are you doing? You are giving them the silent treatment. You are testing them. You are making them walk on eggshells because you are so terrified of being hurt again that you have preemptively become the one causing the hurt. And that realization is entirely crushing. You look at yourself and think, I survived all of that pain just to become the person who inflicts it on someone who actually loves me. But it isn't malicious. You aren't doing it because you want to break them. You are doing it because control is the only safety mechanism you have left. If you are the one pushing them away, then you are the one deciding when the relationship ends. You don't have to wait for the blind side. You get to orchestrate the crash yourself. And look at how this plays out in the smallest daily interactions. Think about the sheer number of times you say you are sorry to this new partner for absolutely no reason at all. They ask you a simple question about what you want for dinner and you completely freeze. You spend 5 minutes trying to calculate the exact right answer that won't make them angry, even though they have never once been angry about dinner. If you drop a glass on the floor, your immediate physical reaction isn't to clean it up. Your reaction is to brace for the screaming that used to follow a broken glass 3 years ago. And when they just walk over with a towel and help you sweep it up, you apologize 10 times in a row. You apologize for being clumsy. You apologize for being an inconvenience. You apologize for apologizing. Because you are still keeping score the old way. You still believe that love is something you have to constantly earn back, and every mistake you make puts you further in the hole. You cannot comprehend that this person just sees a broken glass on the floor. To you, the broken glass is evidence that you are failing at being a partner, and you are terrified that this is the exact moment they are finally going to realize it and leave. So how do we cope with that terror? We refuse to unpack our bags. When you are finally in a safe place, you still keep one foot right near the door. You refuse to let yourself rely on them for anything real. If your car breaks down, you will call a tow truck. You will call a cab. You will walk 3 miles in the rain before you will actually call your partner and ask for a ride. Because asking for help requires depending on them. And depending on them means they have the power to let you down. You tell yourself that you are just being fiercely independent. You tell your friends that you just like handling your own problems. But that is a lie, isn't it? You aren't being independent. You are completely terrified. You are building a separate life inside the shared life, so that when the bottom inevitably falls out, you won't fall with it. You refuse to plan a vacation 6 months in advance because hoping for the future feels like giving the universe permission to take it away. You live day to day, holding your breath, treating a permanent home like a hotel room you are renting by the hour. But we have to turn the mirror entirely on ourselves for a second. Because it is incredibly easy to blame the past. We say, my ex ruined me, or I just have trust issues. And we use that as a permanent excuse for tearing apart a perfectly good life right now. We do this, don't we? We use our history as a wall against the present. We tell the new partner about all the terrible things we survived, and we use that story to buy ourselves a pass for bad behavior. Being the damaged one in the dynamic means you never have to be fully responsible. It means the other person always has to be the understanding one. It means they always have to prove themselves to you, while you never have to prove your stability to them. We keep the trauma alive because it is a fantastic bargaining chip. It gets us out of the terrifying vulnerability of just standing there, as an equal, and saying, I am terrified you are going to leave me. It is much easier to be complicated and broken than it is to be honest. We complain that the world is harsh, but the moment someone offers us a soft place to land, we complain about the fabric of the pillows. We are completely complicit in this friction. We keep the chaos on a leash in the backyard because, deep down, we know exactly how to handle a fight. We have absolutely no idea how to handle a day where nothing goes wrong. And people simply do not talk about how physically draining it is to unlearn this. It takes an unbelievable amount of energy to tell your own body that it is safe 50 times a day. Every time they text you back normally, you have to actively talk yourself down from the ledge. Every time they walk into a room quietly, You have to remind yourself that quiet doesn't mean they are secretly furious. You are fighting a war inside your own head while simultaneously trying to watch a movie. And it is exhausting. You feel like you are doing it wrong. You look at other couples who seem to just naturally exist in peace, and you wonder why it takes so much effort for you to just sit still. But they didn't walk through the same fire you did. Their baseline is safety. Your baseline is survival. And trying to bridge the distance between those two realities feels like a second full-time job. And that is the reality we are sitting with. Moving forward is not a betrayal of the past. It is the entire point of surviving it. You are not cheating on your history by being okay. You are not betraying the version of yourself that was in pain. You are just doing the thing that version fought for, which was getting to the other side. But getting to the other side doesn't mean the flinching stops on day one. You can say, yes, I remember how bad it was, and yes, I am currently sitting with someone good. Both of those things are true at the exact same time, and neither one cancels the other out. You can occupy a good relationship while still feeling occasionally restless. You can be deeply grateful for the peace and still feel a sudden, weird pull toward the old chaos. We don't need a strategy to stop the comparisons. We just need to be completely honest that they are happening. To say, I am in a safe place and my hands are still shaking, without making that into a final verdict on who we are or what we deserve to have. The flinching doesn't mean you should go back. It doesn't mean you are broken beyond repair. It just means your system hasn't finished learning the new language yet. It takes time for the silence to stop sounding like a threat. It takes a long time for the brain to stop translating a soft touch into a warning sign. You don't have to force a peace that isn't completely there yet. You don't have to let go of the survivor who got you through the worst years of your life. You just have to let them sit down for a while. They have earned it, and so have you. Until next time, and thank you for being here.